Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I just want to add a warning here. I will be mentioning figures and making some sums in this video, but please note the amounts are not 100% correct, and I am fully aware of that. So please, no arguments in the comment section. I am aware of that. But what I'm trying to do here is to sketch a picture and not really bring you figures and things that may be correct up to the last cent or whatever. Also, you will notice that there will be a picture in this video where I am actually comparing what Duchess Catherine was wearing at the opening of the new James Bond movie and what Meghan was wearing during her New York visit. Now, I want to reiterate and make it very clear that it's not about what they wore or about their figures or anything like that. For the purposes of this video, I am comparing the prices they paid for their outfits. So please, no comments about body shaming, etc., etc. That is not what this video is about. Okay, so let's have a quick chat about something we had until now refused to talk about, okay? And how this particular subject ties in with Harry and Meghan's New York visit. Now, here in South Africa, we are currently getting free government-sponsored COVID vaccines like everywhere else. However, the day will come when we will have to pay for the vaccine if we do not qualify for state-free medical treatment. And I assume that that will happen the world over eventually. Okay? So in South Africa, if we were to pay for our vaccines, we shall have to pay approximately 354 Rand per dose for the two-shot Pfizer or 709 Rand for both shots. And it will come to about 330 Rand for the single shot Johnson & Johnson. Now, to bring it into context for you in other countries, it is said that Pfizer is charging approximately $20 per dose, AstraZeneca approximately $4, and Johnson & Johnson approximately $10 per dose. Now, like I said in the beginning, this is not 100% accurate as different websites give different prices. And we have to also take into account that the vaccines are currently also subsidized not only by our governments, but by the UN, donations from the richest companies and people in the world, blah, blah, blah. So in places and most smaller countries, our governments will be paying slightly less than the asking price of or from Pfizer or AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson. But that's not the point. So let us look at Harry and Meghan's New York tour. It is said that Meghan's frequent change of outfits cost in the region of £67,000 or $91,000 rounded off. Well, we know that her red suit cost $7,500 and the white Valentino dress she wore on stage, $4,500. And then, of course, there were the change of coats, shoes, the monogrammed handbag. Yes, folks, for those of you who missed it, as they left the Global Citizen event, Meghan was carrying a black Dior purse with the letters DSSOS, DSS for Duchess, O for of, and S for Sussex. And this was confirmed by Dior. Well, This tiny little purse would have set her back approximately 3,450 pounds or 4,700 US dollars. Okay, so then we go on to the next thing, and we have to add the gas guzzling Range Rovers and Chevrolets. The cavalcade included up to 10 vehicles at times, like when they visited the 9/11 memorial. They had 10 vehicles in the cavalcade. When they visited the Harlem school, they had at least 3 plus 1 police vehicle. The same when they arrived at and when they left the hotel. There were 3 black vehicles and at least 1 New York City police vehicle. Now, I do not know what gas costs per litre in the United States, nor how much fuel the vehicles use per kilometre or per mile, nor do I know how many kilometres they travel during their visit, but this alone must cost a pretty penny. Whether they contributed to the cost or came out of the taxpayer's pocket is not relevant for today's video. The third thing we need to look at is the fact that they stayed in the Carlisle, where an average room costs about $1,300 per night. But wait, they did not stay in an average room. No, no, no. They stayed in one of the main suites where Diana stayed during her visit, and which now costs about $8,000 per night. So if we take $8,000 per night for 4 nights, it equals $32,000. Then it's also known that they booked 2 extra rooms for the hair and makeup team and the photographer and videographer who traveled with them. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they got the cheap room, thus $1,300 times 2, which is another $2,600 per night times 4 nights, $10,400. However, I'm told that the makeup team and the photographer and videographer were actually booked into 2 adjacent suites. So I'm not sure whether it wasn't perhaps in fact even more. But let's go on to say that it's at the very least fair to say that their accommodation alone cost in the region of $42,000 or more for the 4 days. 4. We know that besides the 2 or 3 members of their own security and 2 members of staff they traveled with, the makeup artist, hairstylist, photographer, and videographer, etc., would also cost them something. Well, I know that a wedding photographer would cost about $2,500 per event on average, and thus their personal photographer likely charged them double that. Thus, it's just a guess, but I guess their photographer cost them about $20,000 for the weekend in fees only. The videographer, the same, or perhaps even more, so add another $40,000 to the bill, and we are only starting to talk about the real costs here. Now let's talk about private jets. It costs between $4,000 and $8,000 per flying hour for a mid-sized jet. So let's say it costs them $6,000 per hour. Let's take it right down the middle. Now, I'm told it's about 5 hours flying time from Santa Barbara to New York, so we're looking at 10 hours back and forth. And therefore, we can thus add $60,000 to their weekend's bill. Now, the next thing we need to look at, and now we are going to exclude the bodyguards on their own payroll for this exercise. It is said that they had up to 20 guards from time to time, which included Homeland Security guys and New York City cops. I looked. A Homeland Security agent is paid between $5,000 and $10,000 per month. The average New York City police officer with about 5 years' experience earns about $5,000 per month. So again, for this exercise, we are going to simplify it and we're going to use $5,000 per officer, regardless whether a cop or an agent, times approximately 17 of them for approximately 4 days. And now this equates to about $11,000 for the 4 days. The next thing we need to look at is food and drinks. We don't know what they ate. We don't know whether they were provided with food. But regardless of that, we know that Harry and Meghan were seen drinking a $25 a pop martinis while visiting with Misha Nunu and her husband. The last thing we're going to look at is, I don't know how much a makeup artist charges, but I am told that a qualified one can charge up to at least $1,000 per day. So we're looking at another $4,000. Okay, so let's quickly add up the bill without any regard to who paid for what. $91,000 for clothing, let's say $1,000 for vehicles and gas, $42,000 for accommodation, $40,000 for photographer and videographer, $60,000 for private jet back and forth, $11,000 for security, $4,000 for a makeup artist. Okay, so that brings us to $249,000, and let's add 1,000 for food and other expenses just to make it a round figure. So it's fair to say that Harry and Meghan's weekend in New York cost in the region of $250,000. And that, my dears, is adding it up conservatively. Now let's get to the point. $250,000 or $250,000 could have bought 25,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccines or 12,000 Pfizer vaccines in the United States, or 11,363 Johnson & Johnson vaccines in South Africa. Now, I know that Harry and Meghan are on about the distribution of the vaccines. But remember, the distribution of the vaccines is directly tied to the actual cost of the vaccines. So, can anyone please explain to me how the New York tour helped the vaccine equity? Please, I need someone to explain it to me, as I just do not get it. But maybe I'm stupid and out of touch. So if any of you have some brilliant ideas, please let me know. Like I said, I'm fully aware that they were talking about equity, sharing information, sharing intelligence, and distribution. But let's carry on and let's talk about real equity. In order to bring the prices of the vaccines down, we have to consider local production. Yes, as far as that is concerned, they are on the right track. Import is dependent on currency exchange. So, for instance, as we are speaking, the dollar is worth 15 Rand and 11 cents here in South Africa, or $10 would be worth 151 Rand and 10 cents. Add then the cost of the actual distribution and storage, and it comes to a pretty packet. However, in July 2021, the Medicines Patent Pool, the World Health Organization, Afrigen Biologist Pty Limited, the Biologicals and Vaccines Institute of Southern Africa, BROVOC, the South African Medical Research Council, SAMRAC, and African Centers for Disease Control have already signed an agreement to bring together partners to establish the South African mRNA Technology Transfer Hub. Now, this means that they are already in talks with Pfizer and Johnson and Johnson to set up a production hub in South Africa and I know Senegal, where Johnson and Johnson, in partnership with local authorities and local research stations, will continue to develop these vaccines in at least 2 countries in South Africa from where it could be cheaply distributed. Okay? So yes, at the moment, there may be inequality in distribution, but it is not what Harry and Meghan want you to believe. Not even close. Now, I cannot speak for other countries like India or other poverty-stricken countries like Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and those places, but I can speak for what I see and hear around me. I personally live in a tiny rural town, and every Thursday we can go to a vaccination center set up in a church hall where there are at least 120 vaccinations available every Thursday. The venue is clean, well organized, and the whole process is dealt with professionally with administrative personnel, medical personnel, etc. in attendance, not only to administer the vaccines, but also to provide aftercare if needed and answer questions when needed. For Pete's sake, there's even tea and biscuits available for free at our vaccination center. In the initial stages, the venue was relatively full, and there was, or could be, at least a 2-hour waiting period before someone could get their jab. But when my daughter went, there were only about 12 people. Why? Well, I asked around, and the answer was not availability, but ignorance and fear. Ignorance, because we do have a large rural and very poor community, people without TVs, without the internet, and thus people who just do not know or understand what it is all about. And then there are those who still believe in old herbal, natural, and traditional medicines. We just cannot ignore that. And no matter what you say, they are not really interested in modern medicine. And then there is the fear. And now, although I have had my jab, I can also talk from personal experience because I was afraid of getting the vaccination. Firstly, because we don't really know what the long-term effects could be or can be. None of us have had this jab for longer than 3 years, all right? So that was one of my fears. But when I speak to the people around me, the fears stem 100% from not trusting the rich and the elites, which obviously includes big pharma and people like Harry, Meghan, Soros, Gates, etc. People who truly fear this vaccine are the ones who believe that what these elites are telling us to do is exactly what we should not do, as it will likely be harmful to us, as these people appear to crave world domination. So this is one of the stories which are making the rounds among the general public and which creates fear and then prevents them from getting the vaccination. We also know that these vaccines must be stored under certain conditions and can only be stored for so long. So there is no point in, say, South Africa buying 50 million vaccines if only 5 million people will pitch up to get vaccinated. So yes, while countries like South Africa and Senegal are already preparing to produce the vaccines for cheaper distribution across Africa, it is not equity or equal distribution that is really the problem or the biggest problem. But the biggest problem remains the human condition, which is a large, large problem. And that condition can be called a lack of trust. So it is my humble opinion that Harry and Meghan can spend another 4 days at a cost of $250,000 10 times over, and it will not change the African dynamic, and it will not improve the lack of trust that we currently see among the people. However, Prince William and Catherine being photographed getting their vaccines probably encouraged more people to get their vaccines than Harry's stint as a pop star on a New York stage. So, guys, in my opinion, these two fake royals are just hampering the good work of real royals like Prince William and Catherine and costing everyone, including maybe themselves, money which could be better spent elsewhere. Now, my friends, this is just my opinion. I'm sure there will be a couple of you who differ from me on that, and that is your absolute right. Never mind, I will move on to something else very soon, and we'll be back with something else very soon, whereafter I will be taking at least a week's break. But I'll tell you more about that in a new video. I've been hinting at it for quite a while now, and the time is nearing for me to take that actual break. But as I said, we'll talk about that next time. Until then, take good care of yourselves. Bye.